Hey everyone in Birdland, here comes another episode of Out There with the Birds, the podcast with your Out There hosts, Ben Lizdas and Bill Thompson III. Out There with the Birds is supported by Koa Sporting Optics, makers of the legendary 883 Promenade Spotting Scope. To learn more, visit sportingoptics.koa-usa.com. Additional support comes from the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Come birding with us in our favorite places. Learn more at birdwatchersdigest.com/RR. And now here they are, Bill and Ben.
Okay, Ben, we're back on track with in-person podcast episodes. Where are we right now?
Oh my gosh!
Help me.
I forget the name of this pub.
This is the Admiral Nelson.
The Admiral.
No, I'm sorry. It's the Lord Nelson.
The Lord Nelson.
And which is probably better than an admiral. A lord is
I think so.
So this is a pub that's in the corner of the Market Square in Oakham, in the county of Rutland, in England. And we're here. Why?
Well, to catch a beer before we hop on a train to get on a plane after having experienced 3 days of the British BirdFair, which has been a fantastic experience.
So this was your second time at the BirdFair?
Second time at the BirdFair, and
I feel kind of like I've brought you like my nephew or something here because this is the second time I've brought you. Yeah. And we're out here in the garden. You hear us coughing. It's a little smoky out here because it's the smoking section.
Yes.
But we wanted to be outside instead of inside.
Always.
It's a beautiful day in England, like always.
Yeah.
Like every day in England.
Quintessential pub experience in England. The nice thing about what I enjoy about an event like this, of course, are all the quirky little things that are quintessentially British about an experience like this.
Yeah.
The catchphrases. It's obviously they speak English here. Go figure.
Well, it's sort of English as a second English language is really what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Would this be the Queen's English? I don't know. But all sorts of little quirky British isms that you hear. Last night I went out for a walk and was crossing the street, and for those of us who are used to driving on the right-hand side of the road, when you're crossing a street, normally the first place you look is to the left for oncoming traffic.
Right.
I'm looking to the left and I'm crossing the street, and this podcast would be recorded from a hospital if that driver had seen me. Wonder what the yank is. He just applied the brakes heavily, thank God. But boy, I
would rather imagine that Oakham, which has been the home for the British Birdwatching Fair for 29 years now, and today's Sunday, so it's the third and final day of the 29th year of BirdFair. I would imagine Oakham's, over the years, has kind of gotten used to lots of foreign, people from away who aren't used to things here. Like
this time of year, it's kind of like in the springtime we look for turtles crossing the road because we know they're especially vulnerable. In Oakham, this time of year, they look for foreigners crossing their road because they're easy pickings.
Pick them up and carry them across.
Exactly.
That's the motto. Even though I lived here a bit as a student back in the early '80s, you get tons of coins here as change.
Yeah.
And you pay for something like a sandwich or pint or something at the pub, and you pull out I pull out my handful of coins and I look at the person who's selling me whatever and I go,
can you pick it out? Well,
what happened?
With paper money, you can see the numbers on it easily. With the coins here, you have to read each and every coin. So unless you know them by shape and size, which general size, shape, and impression of your coins in your hands, which we don't know here.
We need a field guide to coins is what we need.
Pretty much.
So many of them are confusingly similar, and there's some subspecies, too.
Exactly.
Like the pound note, there's the new pound coin, which is different from the old pound coin, which is, the 50p coin is bigger than the 1 pound coin.
And in case you're listening and wondering, is that as it should be? 50p is less than a pound.
50p is 50 pence, 100 pence to the pound.
Anyways,
pints a pound the world around.
Yes.
Okay.
But essentially, small, quaint little British town. Great experience that way. Exploring new things.
Everybody's been very friendly.
Very friendly.
And we stayed at the Oakham School,
which reminded me of
for wayward boys.
Harry Potter. It's like you feel like you're living in a castle.
I kept looking for owl pellets all around my room, thinking maybe there was an owl in there somewhere. What was that owl's name in Harry Potter?
Hedwig.
Hedwig.
Yeah, but
Angry Inch.
it's great to come to a place like this and have, stop at the pub for a pint. The short little ceilings, the beers they drink here are just different in so many fashions than we have in the U.S.
Fabulous.
And fabulous. The fish and chips, the whole experience of being somewhere. So that's one thing I've enjoyed about this. But then again, there's also the real, what brought us here. As much as like you say, it's fish and chips and pints of beer, which have been great. The British Bird Fair, which is, I would say, a pretty unique experience in Britain, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, and it's the biggest. I mean, there have been many pretenders to the throne, but this one's the biggest, and it's the granddaddy of them all. It's spawned bird fairs and our own birding expo all over the world.
And it seems like the genesis of it kind of suits the British populace really well.
Right.
I don't know what's the population of the UK,
I have no idea.
but
you can't surprise me with questions like that, man.
So anyways, but the number of people, the number of
people who get to this thing is like 20,000, 25,000 people.
It's an amazing mass of, and really not just birders, but I would say that the bird watching enthusiasts of Great Britain probably fancy themselves more as amateur naturalists than necessarily a birder identity, which necessarily isn't always the case in the U.S. But you're walking around the bird fair and there's booths for moth societies, and they make spiders, bug houses, micro moths, hedgehogs, the squirrel appreciation society, or in this case probably the Royal Squirrel Appreciation Society. So the level of enthusiasm for wildlife here per capita seems to really be somewhat exceptional, making it a ripe ground for an event like the British Bird Fair.
Oh yeah, and yet it's in a country that has had people living here for who knows how long, thousands of years, and it's really the countryside is really, you almost can't find anywhere that hasn't felt the hand of man.
Which may be the reason why there's such an intense appreciation here relative to what we see with North American birding, whereas we still have there's still the vestiges of wild America clinging on by its, little scraps of its fingernails.
Right. So what else do you want to talk about today, man?
Well, just
because I know you want to talk.
It really seems like there's a great conservation ethos here in Britain. You have the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. It's a membership organization. I think their membership is around 3 million.
3 million, yep.
So you look at National Audubon, probably one of the largest, bird-related conservation organizations in the U.S. I think they might be 10%, maybe less than 10% of that membership-wise, and they're a big, successful organization. So it gives you an idea. Much smaller country, yet the participation rate in, membership organizations, conservation-based organizations, incredibly high. That's obviously indicative of their passion for wildlife. And it's interesting. I was talking to someone today about the RSPB, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, and they're a group that holds some sway politically here too. In terms of
well, that'd be nice. I remember when that was almost true for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say these guys, when I was trying to think of like what's a kind of non-profit membership type organization back home in the States that might have the political clout that an organization like this seems to have here. First thing that came to mind was the NRA. Obviously, an organization with huge political clout. They want things done. Politicians kind of jump in. My understanding is the RSPB has major sway here, which is just a really interesting cultural difference. And then yet you have an organization as big and successful as the RSPB here. And then on top of that, another organization like BirdLife International comes out of the UK. And so, the fact that they can sustain two major bird-centric conservation organizations in this relatively tiny country is pretty remarkable to me.
And the neat thing is the Bird Fair, it's a non-profit event. It raises money for conservation, and every year raises something north of £300,000. To put that in perspective, that's pretty close to $500,000. In U.S. dollars
for a single event,
for one event over 3 weekends. So it's incredible. People come here to plan their holidays. Of course, the British are legendary travelers. They're world travelers. They love to go,
which is evidence when you look at the composition of the exhibits here, which is a whole another aspect.
I mean, list some of the countries that we saw represented by either country tourism bureaus or or operators, key operators and destinations.
You're looking at, many
Speed round,
operations. India, Bhutan,
Bolivia,
Ghana, New
Gambia,
Zealand, South Africa,
Kenya,
Lithuania,
Tanzania.
Did I say Brazil already?
No, Estonia, Poland.
Oh, you're just
Scotland. I mean,
I was going to say Scotland.
Okay, you can have Scotland. But the interesting thing about it is that
which really isn't that much of a travel destination for the Brits, probably actually.
Well, sometimes, and it's not really its own country, is it? It's part of the UK
Ecuador.
For now. Right. But with, like, for example, some of the places come here as big stands, as they call them here, or we would call them booths.
Yeah.
And they have a bunch of operators and the
Peru,
tourist agencies there.
Colombia.
Like New Zealand, for example, had a huge stand and a bunch of tour operators and some tourism people there. Australia's kind of spread out all over the place. Colombia had a huge stand with a bunch of people. Guatemala had a big stand with a bunch of operators and destinations. And then there are lots and lots of mom and pop, as you would say, places.
Small little tour operators. That absolutely. And and they're all busy. Once again, the British and their penchant for travel, and given the typical climate around here, I could see the desire to get out of town every once in a while, right?
Yeah, sunny Spain, whatever, Portugal. Mm-hmm. The neat thing about the Bird Fair too is I've been coming here. I think this might be my 10th or 11th or so Bird Fair, maybe 12th, and it's like Old Home Week. Like a lot of festivals in the U.S. are, where you're hey, it's these people you see once a year at the Bird Fair.
Yep.
And you get to catch up a little bit and just say, a little pleasant banter back and forth and find out what's what. And but there's as much of that, and it's as important as there is actually doing business. We were here promoting the expo and promoting the
some
magazine.
of the work we do with the Birdwatchers Digest,
but we were also kind of looking for possible reader rendezvous destinations. In the future.
Places to take our readers,
and then just bonding with people. It's the difference between us walking around the aisles and the 8 or 10 different marquees as they call their big giant
tents. Yeah.
This year versus maybe 5 years ago when I was first starting to talk about the expo, it's phenomenal how much people are like, oh yeah, you're the American Bird Fair, American Expo people.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, and what's wonderful as well is you get a sense of birding's global appeal.
Yeah.
As we're talking to, the exhibitors here aren't business people looking to necessarily make a buck from birders, but the exhibitors here are actual birders from around the world, and you get a sense of, oh yeah, birding is a thing in China. Birding is a thing in Australia. There's birders in Africa. There's birders continentally all over the place. And you're talking about them, and you're talking as much about the birds and the wildlife of what's going on back home, wherever they're from, as you are about any sort of business dealings. Right. And that, getting a sense of that the birding community has kind of a global scope, it's heartwarming, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. I think it is. And it gives one hope that the world might be saved, despite current trajectory.
Yeah.
Trends.
I hear you there.
I just made up a new word, trajection.
It was cool to...
That's direction and trajectory. Trajection.
I like that.
Okay.
You know what? I bet you it's been said before.
Sponsored by Fuller's London Pride.
I was thrilled to see a booth from Lithuania here.
Yeah.
I'm Lithuanian, and so
are Lithuanian.
My last name is Lizdas, which actually, and then the Lithuanians were, as soon as I introduced myself to them, my name's Ben, and I'm like, I have the last name Lizdas. They pointed out to me, that in Lithuanian that means bird nest.
No way.
It does. It means bird nest. That's what my last name means.
Awesome.
I know. And I'm like, I know that. So, but it was. I was thrilled to see, the homeland represented here at the Bird Fair. Where else you're going to go to meet Lithuanians like to birdwatch, unless you bump into me back in the U.S. But
right. Oh, that's so cool, man. I did not know that.
Yeah. The folks from the Scottish Highlands.
Yeah.
That was great. The island of Islay was here. Ila.
That's how they say it.
Ila, where you can go to their booth and sample one of, or two, or three of, 6 or 7 or 8, 10 different varieties of aged whiskey.
Yep.
So and hence a lot of the socialization happening at BirdFair, right?
Yeah, it seems like a trend toward the end of the day, like about 4 o'clock every day, the free beers and whatnot come out, and people go, oh, hey.
Yeah.
I never really thought about
it. Once again, the camaraderie, the gathering of at an event like this. So, and some of the other people we had to meet, some birders who, with social media these days, you get to meet people online, and
Right.
you get to so and so, and then you go to an event like this, and they're from across the globe, and you're like, oh,
we're
I get to
Facebook
meet
friends.
you in
Yeah,
person.
right.
Mark and Amity, the
Morning Bride.
musicians. We got to go to a little pub session that they did the other night. Mark is involved in some
He's a
bird observatory.
Yeah, in Yorkshire, I think.
Exactly. Totally fun, and another birder music
Right.
connection.
Exactly.
Got to go to a little pub session where you actually got to play in with them a little bit. So all parts of like the flavor of coming here to BirdFair and really kind of plugging into a global birding network, which feels really good, and again something that we're really cultivating, I'd say, with the expo happening in Philadelphia, where I think we're like a full 60% of our exhibitors are all destination tourism based.
Oh yeah.
So smaller scale, of course.
Really more like an ecotourism event, kind of like the BirdFair is now.
Yeah.
Just pretty incredible.
Another cool thing about BirdFair, I'd say, is that it seems like every year there's exciting products being launched for birders, most notably from optics companies. That's where we hear a lot of the buzz about, because you get some of the major companies coming out of Europe. This is their kind of big main stage for launching products. So where we could first see, in this instance, we saw the Zeiss Harpia spotting scope, their new Victory Line high-end scope.
Right.
It was great to get one of the first looks at that piece of equipment, which birders all over will be able to appreciate and enjoy that once they get their hands on them. But being able to kind of catch the buzz when that's first being launched, talk to Jerry Daubler, the designer of it, and some of the folks at Zeiss to see what's behind it.
Right.
I always appreciate getting some of that insight and being right there as it's coming onto the market.
Right. Yeah, I know we got a chance to use it, and it's a really neat product. I'll be interested to see when the production models hit the market and get a chance to mess around with them.
No doubt it'll catch the attention of a lot of different birders.
Well, for me, BirdFair is like a reunion thing, and I went to school in England when I was young, in my junior year of college, and really fell in love with the UK as a whole and the people. And it's obviously we can relate heavily to people here because we speak the same language. We kind of have the same general roots. And a lot of the same cultural mores. But it's fascinating always to me to travel the world, no matter where, and see like the little customs, the little, the little things that happen. Like, there's a little thing in pubs where you go up and you order, and they pour you a pint, and it takes them, it just doesn't fill the glass right up. It takes them like 3 or 4 pulls.
And as you can tell, Bill and I probably had a few pints here on this trip. We've talked about them a lot, but really, they're sensitive to serving you a pint that's filled to the top.
Right.
If it is
which I really
half
appreciate.
of a centimeter down from the top, let me just top that off for you. Let me be sure that it gets right to the very top.
That's such a great thing, and of course the cultural center, the social center of a lot of these small villages is the pub or the pubs. When I was here in the early '80s, the pubs were very traditional. They'd close in the afternoon. They'd close at 11 o'clock at night, and now they all have to serve food to help. Basically, pubs aren't allowed to be just drink distribution
Drinking establishments.
They need to have food and stuff. And so that's kind of changed the culture of the pub a little bit, but it's still I love it. It's a fascinating thing, and so many of them are old. We're sitting here in front of an old stone wall and on a courtyard in the back of the Lord Nelson, and it's
some rich history.
Yeah,
you think of historically all the podcasts that could have been recorded here.
Yeah, like exactly. Like, did Shakespeare record a podcast?
Exactly.
Here? Right? Did Posh Spice record a podcast here? You never know.
I never thought of that before. Actually, I bet you Posh Spice probably did, and Shakespeare would have
if he'd had an iPhone and a microphone.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, hey, buddy, you and I got to drink up. We got to get our bags. We got to walk to the train station. We got to take the train to Peterborough, switch over.
I love the names of places here.
Get on the southbound.
Can we put a shire at the end of Peterborough Shire?
Peterborough Shire, sure, yeah. And we got to get to down to King's Cross, and then get on the tube out to, way out by Heathrow. We're gonna Hatton Cross is where we got to go to tonight.
It's like a little mini adventure in and of itself.
And then we'll go to a pub tonight and have dinner and maybe one more pint. Then tomorrow it's back across the big salty pond during the eclipse. Headed home.
That's right. And on to the next.
Well, right into expo
birding
mode,
adventure.
man.
Yeah, exactly. The American Birding Expo. So we'll be able to kind of recreate our own little mini bird fair, and looking forward to that experience.
Well, Ben, it's been great being at BirdFair with you. It's been great having these adventures, introducing you to all my friends and making new ones. And thanks for spending 3 days in matching shirts with me.
That one's for you, Greg Neese.
That's all she wrote for this episode of Out There with the Birds. Special thanks to Koa, our optics sponsor. Learn more about their fine line of birding products at sportingoptics.koa-usa.com. We're also supported by the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Your next birding adventure starts at birdwatchersdigest.com/RR. Until we meet again in 2 weeks, keep your diopter adjusted and we'll see you out there with the birds. Cheers!